All right. Hey, everybody. Excited to be joined here by Ken Roberts, my good friend. Ken, you and I have been talking about your transition, your next season, and what you've been focused on, and I wanted to dive in a bit more about what God has been sharing with you and what's been on your heart. And so just wanted to spend some time talking a little bit more about that.
Thanks, Josh, man. I appreciate this a lot. Yeah, you know how it came about. You and I have known each other for a long time, and how it came about. I just turned 69. As this recording is, we're about
You're a young man.
We're about to, yeah. We're about to end 2025, so about 3 weeks ago, I turned 69. And I can't believe I'm that age. Every time I say it, it's like, that can't be true. But it's a big but it is true. So a couple of years ago, I really started thinking about, what I would call my legacy season. My life has always been about trying to live life with really intentionality. One of my life messages, that I help a lot of other leaders with, other people with, is helping finish well. So we live life in the way that at the end we are finishing well. Matthew 25, the stewardship idea of our life. So that's been a journey for me for a long time. And really a couple of years ago, I started seriously thinking about it and really asking the question, not in a morbid way, but really in a way of motivation. Is there anything that I feel like I still need to steward that I haven't put on the table yet? And that got me thinking, through that whole idea, like I want to finish well in this season. And so when I turned 69, I've framed this season I'm in, the next quarter of my life, my legacy season. So that's what I say now. I say very clearly, I kind of stand it, look in the eye and say, I'm in my legacy season.
Yeah, I think people hear the word legacy and they think different things. Like,
Yep.
I think it's hard to not think of an end if you
Yep.
think of legacy. So I know what you mean by you're not trying to be dark when you say legacy, but what does that word really mean to you
Yeah.
when you say legacy season?
Yeah. We're always building our legacy, by every season, by our life, our reputation, our marriage, our kids, our grandkids, our vocation, who we've influenced, over the years. So those are always, that's assumed with me when I think about legacy. But when I'm thinking about legacy, I'm thinking specifically, what do I have left that I'm supposed to, quote, offer to the world from my kingdom, Christian kingdom understanding, that I want to pass along to others. So, my legacy with my wife, with my family, with my kids, with my grandkids, people who I maybe hopefully have influenced over the years. But it's more for me, it's more focused regarding what do I still want to pass on? Whether it helps one person or 10,000 people, that's really secondary. So when I think about legacy, that's what I'm talking about. I'm not just talking about, a trust fund or wealth or et cetera, but I'm talking about, I want to sow a seed that has the potential to have a long-term harvest. It's another way to think about it. And if I don't sow the seed, it's not going to happen. So that's what I'm thinking about in this season of my life. That I'm in my legacy.
When I hear you say that,
yep.
When I hear you say that, it reminds me of this concept that John Maxwell talked about with the relay race when it comes to, and he was more addressing this from a leadership standpoint, that oftentimes leaders are waiting until they are past their prime to pass the baton to the next generation when it comes to leadership. But when I hear you say legacy, it's about what I can pass on. I think of that analogy of running the race, that relay race, of being able to pass down to the next runners that are coming behind you. And you win those types of races when you're running at full speed and the person behind you is running at full speed and you pass off that baton. It's like these truths are passed.
It's interesting that you brought up that image, because my image for a long time, really, Josh, probably 20 years or longer has been of how I think about my own life is I'm running the Olympic race, and I've entered the arena. It's my final lap. And I'm about to cross the finish line, and I look back, and there are thousands of people running behind me. And for me, that's not evangelism. For some, it may be, in the world that I live in. But for me, it's people who are living their life with intentionality. They are running in a way, whether they're 20, 30, 40, 60, the age is really secondary because you want to start early. You want to create these patterns, these understandings. And I look back and there are actually thousands of people running behind me that in some way I've hopefully influenced them to run with intentionality so that ultimately they can finish well. So that's my image. It has been for a long time.
That's awesome. So when you say legacy, how are you measuring that when it comes to seeing it deployed? Because having a definition of what the ultimate goal is, but how do you start to know that the seeds are taking root or that the embers are starting to be fanned? What do you see as that hallmark?
The first thing I had to do was I had to ask myself the question, if I pass tomorrow, what do I feel like that I should have been stewarding that I have not sown the seed yet? I haven't left it on the table yet. So you have to assess. There has to be some assessment. That isn't always like really, really clear, but we have a little bit of an idea. What is it that I can pass on? What is it that I have learned? What is it my experience has been? What has God done in me or through me, that I could pass on? So I had to ask that question. And then I had to really move toward what am I doing about it? So it's really kind of a both and. And for me, what happened is I really started thinking about this last year and very specifically in moving into this, what were those things? And last November, this would have been almost a year ago, based upon the time of this recording, this is when I started saying in 2025, I had to move into my legacy season. But I asked the question, what do I still need to do to leave on the table? And I didn't have any sense. This is not morbid. This is not like, okay, I got a year left. It was like, no, I got to be intentional about this. Then I got sick, Josh, in January and got real sick. For me, it was very sick for 2 weeks, which made the whole idea more reality. Like, because our life can decline fairly quickly. And I begin to think about that even more so. So for me, it was 3 things to answer your question. And then we could talk about, kind of went there. I knew, again, because I've kind of read my life over the years and I've been very intentional about this, that there were 3 things that I feel like I'm supposed to steward to pass on, again, in a way to others. And for me, there's 3 things. And I use 3 F's. They're an easy way to think about them, I think. Number 1 is what I call form. And form is something that I've carried in my own life and I've worked on, written about, etc., for a long time, literally 20 years. And form is the idea of how do we, in incremental ways, become more like Christ. I pastored for 33 years. Now I've been coaching people for the last 10 years. Around that whole area, how can I grow in the area of the nature of Christ? And so I've been working on really how do we do that in practical, integrated, incremental ways. So that's one of the F's. So I asked myself, I've got a lot there. I've tried to live it my own self. But if I were to pass tomorrow, there's nothing that I could leave on the table that you could find. So I just said, I got to do something there. And again, to me, it's more about stewardship, influence and impact to whatever it is. But you've got to sow the seed so there's a harvest. So that's the first one, was form. The second one, F, is what I call focus. And focus is kind of form is the being side of a person's life. Focus is more the intentional doing side of a person's life. What is my life purpose? What is that call? What am I to contribute? My premise there, Josh, is that followers of Jesus, that's obviously my Christian perspective, followers of Jesus should be the most purposeful people on the planet, but oftentimes we aren't. So I have a real desire to help people find out what that I call the North Star. What is it about Josh that he is the contribution he's to make, and is he moving in that direction? Is he moving in that direction? So that's what I call the focus life. So it's form and focus. And then the last F is the idea of finishing well. And what the idea of finishing well is, and again, we've talked about this through some other conversations, is we all have defining moments in life that how we navigate them really kind of determines the trajectory of whether we're going to finish well or not. That can be loss, that could be pain, that could be spiritual disorientation, that could be seasons where our life feels like it's falling apart, that could be leaders who go through crisis zones or, the world's being turned upside down. Those are the significant seasons where we can either get stuck, stall out, or get the most out of those defining moments so we ultimately stay on track to finish well. So those are my 3 F's. And for me, I know, Josh, without a doubt, that's my legacy contribution this season of my life. I want to leave something in these 3 F's behind, whether, again, I help 1,000 people, 1 person, or 10,000 people. It honestly is secondary. But at the end of my life, Matthew 25, this is the motivation behind it. When I cross over the line, I want to hear the Lord say, well done, good and faithful servant. We all get in by grace. We know that. We all get in by grace. So this is not a merit thing. But those words in Matthew 25 are really in the context of stewardship, what we have done with what God has given us. And that's the motivation behind, what I call a well-finished life, a well-finished life.
Well, I remember when you and I were talking over breakfast, you had this sense of divine urgency behind the transition, where it was like very clear to you that this is what the Lord is requiring of you. It's not just like an invitation. It's more of like you are being invited in, but there was a level of like seriousness, somberness, but also excitement. It was like both.
Yep.
And so the fact that you're bringing and crafting and distilling a lot of the things that you've been learning into these courses so that other individuals can be part of that same journey, but really exploring what it is that God is doing in them from a formation standpoint, obviously from their focus standpoint. Hey, what are the specific tasks that he has for me? The things that possibly are a thread that's been woven out all of the past couple of decades. I may have been blind to that thread, but we really need to dive in at what has the Holy Spirit been doing that you may have been frustrated by because you're constantly looking elsewhere. Meanwhile, you're missing what God has been doing. That the family just watched this It's a Wonderful Life for the holiday seasons, and I think that regardless of the season, if you watch that movie, the tension that George Bailey character has of wanting to see the world, constantly feeling like a failure, constantly feeling like he's missing his dream, but at the same time has all of these seeds, all of this rich wealth. I love the fact that the third element of what you're saying, that third F, is about finishing well, because there's so many stories in the Bible where you have characters that start well, or they kind of have this moment where they become followers, and then there's kind of like a falling away. And that focus of how do we withstand, like what Paul, where's in the Bible it says, having done all stand, to stand?
Ephesians.
Ephesians,
yeah. Well, it's very true what you just said. And this is not for everybody, so I don't want to put this on everybody. But for me, again, we're talking about this, really how I'm saying this right now, what I've decided to do with the rest of my life. I mean, that's how direct I'm making this.
Yeah.
And for me, it became not just a good idea. I didn't just read something, hey, I'll try this, or I'm bored with what I'm doing. It really did. I don't use this word hardly ever, really, but it grew to be, it felt like it was actually a mandate for my life in this season of my life, so it felt like a commission, with a command, the idea, that I'm really at.
You were voluntold.
Yeah, exactly. So this is something I'm doing with really, conviction, with passion, and I'm very excited about it. It's not a heavy weight. It's the opposite. It's a very adventurous thing, to enter into this season.
Ken, what are your thoughts on this? I think of the Mike Tyson quote, everyone's got a plan until they get punched in the mouth.
Yes.
And I think so many Christians specifically internalize their failures, they internalize their fears, they internalize their inability to certain accomplishments as though it's them, and they miss. And because they miss, they really are damaging themselves, that there is an enemy that is seeking to destroy, uproot, divert, distract, numb you from this next season, that this is true spiritual warfare at the same time as it is a realization of what the Holy Spirit is doing and where the kingdom is advancing and your role in that advancing kingdom. Can you speak a bit about just some of the tension and spiritual warfare that may be coming at people that are thinking about their next season, or when you're on the verge of a next season, what type of things are coming at you to possibly try to block you from it, or to say, no, it's not that big of a deal, or you've tried this before and it's kind of gotten off the rails.
Well, I do think it's a biblical principle without, getting into Star Wars, ideas type thing back and forth. But I definitely think there's a biblical principle there. You see it in the same verse of Jesus' his mission. I came, that you might have life and have it to the full. And in the very same verse, it says that, the enemy, he comes to kill, steal, and destroy. So there is that, hey, here it is, nope, here it is, nope, so that is that dynamic without a doubt. I would say, I think that's why it's important for a couple of different things. I'll go back to my 3 F's because I think they tie together in really kind of answering your question regarding that. Is form, our journey with Jesus, John 15, is the source and the ongoing road to finishing well. Everything springs from that, So it's growing in our intimacy with him. It's growing in our relationship with him. It's growing with taking things out, putting things in. It's growing with authenticity. It's growing with, Christ-like nature. It's growing with the struggle, of our journey of becoming more like Christ, or, that whole type of thing. So that's foundational. That's the source. And you can't jump to the other things without that, because that is the source of finishing well, is our life with Jesus. Okay, so that's the first one. The second thing then with the focus I would go to is, if you don't have a fair idea of what your North Star is and have a compass for your life, you don't know how to fight for your destiny because you don't know what it is. So there's nothing to look at. I say this, a North Star in a person's life, again, back to focus, is so important because, like you were talking about, life is going to knock us off our horse at some point, more than once. And if we don't have any compass when we get back up, we don't know where to lean into. But if I have an idea of this is part of my stewardship of my life, what God's given me, I can at least stumble in that direction. So to fight for something, you got to know what you're fighting for. So when the enemy comes against me, and he does me just like anybody else in this season, it's interesting you asked the question, I have felt the headwind as strong as any other time, because I know there's something for me, but he says, no, maybe not. And so all my things I have to deal with as well. But one of the things that helps me do that is my life with Jesus, the ongoing well of my life with Jesus that I try to, water, but also the clarity of my destiny, the clarity of my legacy season, the clarity of my North Star. So I have something to fight for because I know the direction I need to head in. Then the third thing I would say in answering, your question is the finishing well and these defining moments that we all go through. And oftentimes they do happen right before a new season, right before our new invitation into our next season. There's a fight there. But what I help people try to, think about is that's where God will do his deepest and most beautiful work, is in the fight, is in the darkness, is in the wilderness, is in the valley. And if people can, the way I say it, is help your defining moments be meaningful. So if when we're in the resistance, we're in the battle, if we can at least say, okay, this is a chance to experience God in my life in the deeper way, and probably gain directional clarity for next in a greater way, then they become growth opportunities. They do become growth opportunities. Let's find God in this season instead of, I don't think I'm going to make it. I can't make it. I don't want to go through it, et cetera, et cetera. But there definitely is resistance at the threshold of every new.
We define so much of our lives through our accomplishments and the milestones that we're passing, that what you're saying about the center of gravity really being the relationship, it's the connection to the vine that matters beyond anything else. And
totally.
You know that you're connected to the vine because there's these fruits that are coming through your life. But the key is it's coming through your life. It's coming through you, just like a vine is having the life force of the trunk of that vine flowing through it. And so opening up to the reality that the King is good, the Father is good, and you are connected to him, out of that outflow comes your ability to finish well. And through that flow is coming the definition of what your focus should really be. there's only two kingdoms in this world. You're either part of the kingdom of God or you're the kingdom of the world. But the kingdom of the world is so vindictive and manipulating and just loves to crush your spirit the minute that you fail. But that is not the Father's heart.
Yeah. I have such a heart for this. What I've ended up calling it, is living a well-finished life, living a well-finished life. And what I want to emphasize for those, who are watching is that we don't wait till we're 65 or 69 to think about a well-finished life. You're in a different season than I am in life with kids and job and vocation, et cetera, building businesses. But it's how we really do continue to think about life in those 3 F's idea, as we continue to, whether we're 20, 40, 60, et cetera, so that we're on the right path, heading in the right direction to ultimately finish well. Because Josh, all of us want to hear the words, well done, good and faithful servant. But I think we assume that's just going to happen if we just, get to heaven, whatever we think of, how we define heaven. But that's not really the context of those words. They're in the context of, stewarding our life well. It's not perfection, it's not merit, but it's moving into those areas as well. Here's my goal, and we can kind of finish with this, is that I don't usually say this, I don't usually have like goal numbers, but I have a conviction right now, and my prayer is, Lord, as long as I have physical health and mental clarity, these are the 3 F's these are the 3 nails I want to hit. And my desire is to directly help 1,000 Christian ministry and business leaders and 10,000 followers of Jesus Christ, guide them through defining moments in their life and leadership so they can really emerge with greater strength, clarity, and renewed hope. That's kind of the new byline, so they can ultimately finish well. And, I don't have like numbers on the wall. I don't have a business plan for that, but there's something of faith in the confession of it that I lean into, that, Lord, I want to finish well. And this is how I define helping as many people as possible.
Ken, if people are resonating with what you're saying and they want to connect with you and learn a bit more about how they can still take the next step towards that next season, how can they get in touch with you?
Yeah, the easiest way would be to go to my website, and it's just my name, Ken L. Lee is my middle name, KenLRoberts.com, KenLRoberts.com. And if they go there, they'll find the website. And again, the website, the name of it is going to be A Well-Finished Life, Ken L. Roberts, and then the idea of a well-finished life. They'll find material there, and they'll also find, a monthly newsletter that I'm doing that gives ideas on these things, just little ideas on these things that maybe can give some instruction, inspiration, help in any way. And if I can help people finish well through form, which is something I've been doing, focus, or navigating defining moments that they're in. I do a lot of coaching with helping people do that. That's really is my desire. That's my motivation, is to influence as many people I can in my legacy season to finish well.
Love it. Thanks for the time, my friend.
Thanks, man. Great to talk to you.
Talk soon.
Okay.